In your opinion, what was the most impressive aspect of their win?
I thought their game plan from the beginning, that they were going to negate that defensive front and they were going to attack that secondary. Man, they went after that secondary. T.Y. Hilton hadn't spent much time practicing in the last month, has been banged up. People had talked about the story before the game. No player in NFL history had the type of average that he had playing the Texans in Houston. So, man, they got him involved in the game plan immediately, and to be able to spread the ball around Andrew to all his different receivers. I thought their game plan going in there from Frank Wright was the key to that game, getting off to that great start and the physicality of, no, we're not going to back Andrew up 40 times, run the ball maybe 15. No, we're going to run the ball. Marlon Mack's ability to be able to avoid tackles, be an elusive, be a better runner than we anticipated him being in the NFL. Man, what a great fit with that new offensive line.
And the Texans were one of 3 teams in the league this year that hadn't allowed a 100-yard rusher.
Yes.
And Marlon Mack obliterated them.
Yep.
Like, Luck, if you look at Luck's stat line, if you watch the game, you know Luck was in full control. But he wasn't. This wasn't his best playoff game. This wasn't his best game of the season. Like, Luck played well enough because he didn't have to do too much, because he was never under pressure, and they were getting 5 yards per carry. Marlon Mack was spectacular. The Colts defense, which this is where it's good to remind people, since week 7 in the NFL, the Colts are #1 in the NFL in the following categories: record, point differential, defense, third down percentage. This has been a excellent team over now an 11-week sample, and they jumped on Houston from the opening kick, and this game was over midway through the third quarter, or midway through the second quarter, pardon me. It was 21-0. It was past the sticks time midway through the second quarter, and the Colts could just hold on from there.
With the way Andrew Luck is playing and what we saw from their defense and how well their defense is this Colts team the most dangerous team in the playoffs right now?
I think it's not the team that the Chiefs wanted to face. And it's not just because of Andrew Luck, but I believe that they can ball control. I believe that their defense, especially their back end, their secondary, has gotten so much better. And we're talking about Frank Wright, who we had talked about the Bill Belichick way is training camp's been abbreviated. You can't be as physical. You can't have as many 2-a-day practices. You can't develop your team the way you used to. So now coaches are taking those first 4 games in September, maybe the first week in October, to develop their team. Frank Wright, this is the first time he's ever put a team together. So what he did, it took them more time. Now, they were able to be able to save their season. We haven't seen many teams get off to that type of start. But with a young coach, with a young coaching staff, to me, they're the hottest team who played this weekend and the most dangerous, because what that defense that people don't know and what they've done since that week that Nick said,
since
being
they were
the best
1 and
in
5,
the league.
since starting 1 and 5 since then.
You heard Deshaun Watson in the press conference, very low key, very even keeled about the way this game ended. How do you think he played, and what do we learn from him in this one?
I'm not going to kill him for it, but the reality is the worst game he's played as a pro. I mean, I've watched every game Deshaun Watson's played since his second year at Clemson. And he was skipping passes. He was missing guys. Now, he was a man on an island. He was under duress. Nuke Hopkins, who's his only healthy weapon left, wasn't even healthy. And they had no running attack.
His second option was hurt. His third
option was hurt. Their running game was non-existent. If you take out his runs, they ran the ball 8 times for 29 yards. So he was in a terrible position. And so we should be even keeled. This wasn't on him, this loss. Bill O'Brien said, I told the guys beforehand, and you guys know I've been very critical of Bill O'Brien, I didn't get him ready to play. Here's what I know. Since Bill O'Brien's been the head coach of the Texans, they've played in 4 playoff games. A 30-0 home loss to the Chiefs, a 21-7 home loss yesterday, a blowout loss to the Patriots. Their one win was against a third-string quarterback in Oakland. I think it was Connor Cook. Like, this Texans team under this regime has never been ready to play opening kick of a playoff game. And yesterday, they showed a little life late, but the game was far too gone.
They can look across the field and try to get a blueprint for what Deshaun needs. Look at Andrew Luck. What do? They changed that offensive line. They changed their philosophy. They're going to support the quarterback with a running game, so I would look for them to potentially get a another running back or two, and you got to support the offensive line. I believe if his wide receivers are healthy, Nuke was not healthy in this game, DeAndre Hopkins, and the other guys are hurt. So I believe that they can get this turned around, but watch the Colts. See what the Colts did and how much more physical they got on the offensive side.
To C's point about the offensive line and running game, they have a ton of cap space for the first time in a while there. You would expect them to be involved at least in Le'Veon Bell discussions. And last year, they didn't have a first or second round pick because of trades to get DeAndre and to get rid of Brock Osweiler. They will be able to actually upgrade the offensive line this offseason in the draft.
All right, Cece, what did the Chargers do defensively to shut down Lamar Jackson?
Well, one of the things they did, Gus Bradley, he approached Anthony Lynn, the coach, earlier in the week, and he had come up with the scheme that they had used one other time before. They used it late in the season against Kansas City, 2017 season, at the end of the season, because they had a number of linebackers that were injured, and they felt like Kansas City, with the type of speed that they had, that they needed more defensive backs on the field. So he approached Anthony Lynn earlier in the week. Anthony Lynn's initial reaction is, are you crazy? It's my first playoff game. Are you trying to get me fired? But that's one of the things that Anthony Lynn, he has going for him. He's got support on the defensive side with Gus Bradley, his former head coaching experience, and on the offensive side with Ken Wisenhunt, his former being a head coach. So that really helps you as a young coach.
So the scheme that Chris is talking about is they had 7 defensive backs on the field for 57 of the 58 snaps.
Yeah, so they had 2 safeties inside the box playing typically the normal inside linebacker spots in a nickel defense.
And that is, on its face, it was shocking to me because I would think that, and I guess this is one of the reasons why I'm not a defensive coordinator in the NFL.
This is the one reason
that if you want to stop a running team, you add big people, not little people. But what they saw was the part that makes the Ravens running game so dominant is the speed of the quarterback, the threat of the quarterback to run. So you have Derwin James who can go sideline to sideline with him. You added another safety on the field, Adrian Phillips, right? At basically all times.
Yes.
And then you ask your D linemen to do a great job in making sure those offensive linemen can't get up to the second level to where they could just obliterate those small people out there. And maybe it was out of necessity, or partially because they had injuries, but also because this is the first time in Lamar Jackson's football career, college or pro, he's faced a team for a second time in a year. So they saw what worked and most notably what didn't work a few weeks ago when they played, and they made an adjustment, and it totally stifled the Ravens' running attack, which is why they had no offense until a rally late in the game.
There's a couple things that you worry about. If you're going to deploy 7 defensive backs on the field all the time, you worry about the linemen getting on top of them and be able to, because with the size, DBs aren't used to. They're used to being in space with guys pulling out on them. They're not used to being inside the interior part of the defense. So you got to get penetration into the backfield by the defensive lineman that throws off that offensive line, and these guys have to be able to get sideline to sideline. So that's what you worry about. With a small unit on the field, a conventional NFL offense, if it was Seattle, because Seattle doesn't run their quarterback, they run their running backs predominantly, you can take advantage of. But when your quarterback is maybe 30 to 50% of your rushing attack, you can get away with being smaller because the change of direction, that's what you want smaller players for. And the play action. Gus Bradley thought when they got fooled in play action that the DBs could still get back into coverage,
better than linebackers
would be reacting to those play fakes.
So maybe it doesn't work against the Patriots next week.
Right.
But let's go back and talk a little bit about Lamar Jackson. And we talked about this earlier. There were calls for Joe Flacco to come in. Where do you stand on whether Harbaugh should have maybe made the turn to Flacco?
I understand why people would be calling for it, because through 3 quarters, they couldn't have been worse offensively. They kept putting the ball on the ground. Lamar couldn't complete a pass. He went 2 hours. He went from 1:07 Eastern time to 3:07 Eastern time between completions. So I get it. But Joe Flacco was not going to come in and save the day. And going to Flacco, what it would have done in my eyes, is set back the development of the future of your franchise. Joe Flacco was awful his first playoff start. He was awful his 4th playoff start. He was awful in the playoffs a lot early in his career. They allowed him to work through it. Now, they were winning those games because the defense had played better. But I don't think you could have gone to Flacco and then said, but Lamar's our guy in the future. I think it would have stunted that.
Yeah, when you spend that first-round pick, when you trade to get back into the first round, you realize he's going to be the future unless it's a total collapse. Now, I've been alive long enough, and I've also covered the league long enough I've covered when we came on the TV and said, hey, you think the Ravens should replace Joe Flacco? Also, before they had the Mile High Miracle, Flacco was not very, very good in that game. So there have been times where the Baltimore fans were calling for the quarterback. Right. Now, they had that great defense, and they end up winning a Super Bowl. So Flacco, yes, he's kind of a made man, like we say with Eli Manning, but for the future of the franchise. And the reason why they end up having a special season was because they came up with a running attack where they were going to run these RPOs and this version of how we can be physical. You can't run that with Joe Flacco being in the game. So offensively, they are not a throw the ball down the field. They don't have the wide receivers to build support that. So Harbaugh did the right thing. Their future is in Lamar Jackson. They stuck with their future in this game.
And I thought it was great, just quickly, that Jimmy Smith, the corner for the Ravens, when the fans were calling for Flacco, literally went to the fans and said, how do you think we got here? So even the players on the team know that Lamar Jackson, his ability to run, was a huge reason they even got into the tournament and won the division. So really rough game for him.
Especially since Joe Flacco is most likely not going to be there. Harbaugh said after the game, look, he's going to be playing for someone's. Exactly. So they knew that they were going to move on. All right. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.